I want you to just close your eyes for a second. Picture that one family you know, I think. You know exactly who I'm talking about. Maybe they live down the street from you, or maybe you just see their highlight reel on social media. The lawn is perfect. The house is this crisp, clean white. And the family, they look like they've walked right out of a catalog.
The Listagram family, yeah, but from long before Instagram was even a thing.
Exactly. The parents are always smiling. They're charming. They seem, I don't know, endlessly patient. And the kids are just these high achievers, captain of the debate team, first chair violin, always polite. They're the neighbors. Everyone secretly, or maybe not so secretly, envies, it looks like. Just absolute harmony.
It's so cinematic. It's like the opening shot of a movie where everything feels just a little too saturated, a little too good to be true.
Yeah.
And you know that in those movies, that perfection is almost always a sign that something is very, very wrong underneath.
That is exactly what we are unpacking today, because we're not just talking about the old cliche that no family is perfect. We all know that. Every family has its issues. We are talking about a very specific dynamic where that perfection isn't just a goal, it's a rigid, enforced costume.
Right. We're doing a deep dive into a psychological concept called pseudo-mutuality. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but it's a fascinating and honestly a pretty tragic phenomenon.
It is.
It really explains why some of those perfect families are actually operating in a way that is so damaging to the people inside them, especially the children.
I was reading through the definition, and the name itself, pseudo-mutuality, is so deceptive. I mean, mutuality sounds great, right?
Yeah, it sounds healthy.
It implies we're in this together, we share feelings, we're connected, but that pseudo part just flips the entire table.
Exactly. Pseudo means false. So on the surface, this kind of family looks incredibly open and understanding and connected. They might even be the family that hugs more or says, "I love you" more in public. But that's the masquerade. The reality is that the relationship is actually incredibly rigid and depersonalizing.
There was this one metaphor in the research that it really stuck with me. It described this family dynamic as a prison disguised as a preschool.
Wow. That is a visceral image, isn't it?
It really is. Because when you think of a preschool, you think bright colors, growth, learning, safety. But this dynamic, it looks so sweet and wholesome on the outside, but inside, it's actually a lockdown.
Precisely. In a preschool, the whole goal is play and self-discovery. In a prison, the goal is containment and order. In a pseudo-mutual family, everything is a facade to maintain that order.
So to the outside world, it's all unity.
All support and unity. But on the inside, there are these strict, unspoken rules. You aren't free to be yourself. You're only free to be the character that you've been cast to play.
So our mission today is to peel back that perfect layer of paint. We're going to look at the psychology behind these families where love is. Well, it's basically a performance. We want to understand how this happens, what it does to a child's sense of self, and this is the part that really hit me, how it haunts them well into their adult lives.
And I think it's important to frame this right from the start. We're not talking about chaotic, abusive villains who wake up wanting to hurt their kids. This dynamic is structured, it's organized, it's quiet.
Yes.
And that's what makes it so insidious, so hard to spot, and so hard to escape.
So let's get into the why. Who builds a prison disguised as a preschool? What would drive a parent to create this kind of environment?
Well, the psychology here points pretty clearly to a specific personality profile. We're often dealing with parents who have strong narcissistic traits.
A narcissistic warden.
In a way, yeah. But let's humanize that warden for a moment just so we can understand the mechanism. This parent is often driven by a really deep, fragile insecurity. They see their family not as a group of individuals, but as a direct reflection of themselves.
So the child isn't a separate person. The child is more like an arm or a leg, just an extension of the parent.
Exactly. In a healthy family, a parent watches their child with curiosity. They're asking, who is this little person developing in front of me? It's a process of discovery.
Right.
In a pseudo-mutual family, that curiosity is completely replaced by anxiety and control. The parent isn't trying to meet the child. They're trying to mold the child into a prop that supports the parent's own story of having a perfect life.
That's a huge distinction. It's the difference between a parent saying, clean your room because it's a mess, and a parent implying, your messy room makes me look like a failure.
Yes. The motivation is, I need to uphold this image to feel worthy. So the child becomes responsible for the parent's ego. The child needs to be perfect so the parent can feel perfect.
That sounds incredibly heavy for a kid. You're basically carrying your parents' self-esteem around in your backpack with your homework.
It's a profound amount of emotional labor for someone who hasn't even learned long division yet.
Let's make this more concrete because this abstract psychology can be hard to visualize. The research used this specific archetype that I found really helpful, the swimmer. I want to walk through this scenario to see how it plays out day to day.
This is a classic example of what's called the assigned script. So imagine a household where the parents have decided, maybe consciously, maybe not, that our child is a swimmer.
Okay, so to the neighbors, to the school, what does that look like?
It looks like incredible sacrificial support. The parents are up at 4 a.m. driving to practice. They are cheering the loudest at the galas. They're buying the best gear, organizing the carpools. To the world, this is pure devotion.
It looks like love. It looks like they are so invested in their child's success.
But internally, to the child, it feels like surveillance.
I can just imagine the car ride home. It's not, hey, did you have fun? It's a post-game analysis of their split times.
Exactly. It's the parent saying, I notice you breathe to the left too often in that third lap. The parent is, breathing down your neck, metaphorically and literally.
Yeah.
Because the support isn't for the child's happiness. It's for the child's performance.
The success is fuel for the parent's ego.
That's it.
And here's where the pseudo part really shows its teeth. So play this out for me. What happens if the kid hates swimming? Say they're 15. They come.
In a healthy family, that might be met with some disappointment, sure, especially after all that investment. But ultimately, there's a conversation. Why? Okay, let's talk about drama.
Right.
In a pseudo-mutual family, that kind of dissent is treated like a betrayal.
It's not just quitting a sport, it's a personal attack.
It's a script violation. The parent doesn't hear, I have a new interest. They hear, I am destroying the image you worked so hard to build. They'll say things like, after everything we've sacrificed for you, or don't be ridiculous, you're a swimmer. That's who you are.
That's who you are. Wow, that's the key phrase right there. They're telling you what your identity is.
And the emotional temperature in that house just drops to absolute zero. The warmth vanishes. The child gets the silent treatment or heavy sighs, just this palpable disappointment that hangs in the air.
So the child learns very, very quickly. If I stop swimming, I lose their love.
Correct. So what do? Usually they get back in the pool. Not because they want to swim, but to buy back the peace in the house. They stifle their own needs to manage their parents' emotions.
And this leads to that concept you mentioned, depersonalization. I really want to dig into that because it just sounds terrifying.
It's the feeling of being a vessel. The child starts to feel like they aren't living their own life. They're just acting out a role in someone else's play. And even their successes, the gold medals, the awards, they don't feel like theirs.
Because they didn't choose them.
Right. If you win a gold medal in a sport you secretly hate, but your father loves it, whose medal is it, really? It feels like it belongs to him. The child feels hollow. They might look incredibly successful on paper, but inside, there's just a vacuum where their personality should be.
I can see how that would lead to just deep, deep anxiety. You're constantly waiting for the director to yell, cut, and tell you you're doing it all wrong.
Or depression. Because pursuing your own dreams feels dangerous. It feels like a fast track to being abandoned. Or even worse, you might not even know what your own dreams are because you've never been allowed to explore them.
Wow.
You lose touch with your own wants and needs because you've spent your entire life just scanning your parents' faces to see what they want.
That's scanning behavior. That's the mechanism that keeps this whole machine running, isn't it? It's all about strings attached.
Transactional love. That is the core currency of the pseudo-mutual family.
It's like a contract. I will provide warmth and shelter and praise as long as you stick to the script.
Yes. Love isn't the baseline condition of the relationship. It's a reward. It's a wage you earn for performing correctly.
The unspoken message is, I don't love you. I love what you do for me.
And that's the emotional tax. The child learns a devastating lesson. Their value as a human being is entirely dependent on meeting expectations. Imagine the exhaustion of that.
You can never relax.
Never. You can never just be at home. You're constantly auditioning for your parents' affection every single day.
And you can't just leave that exhaustion at the front door when you move out. Which brings us to the long-term impact, because eventually these kids grow up. They go to college, get jobs, get married. But the research suggests they don't really leave that dynamic behind.
It's what we call the echo. Adult relationships tend to just mirror the family dynamic.
So if you were raised in a house where love was conditional and controlling, you go out into the world and look where you actually look for that again.
Unconsciously, yes. We are drawn to what is familiar, even if what's familiar is painful. It's this magnetism of control. Someone raised in this kind of home might find themselves attracted to partners or friends who replicate that same conditional approval.
It's almost like their radar is jammed. They meet someone who is controlling or critical, and instead of their brain thinking red flag, it thinks, this feels like home. This is what love feels like. I know the rules here.
Or they think, this is what I deserve.
Yeah.
If you're conditioned to believe your worth is tied to earning approval, you will constantly seek out people whose approval is hard to earn.
I was trying to picture this in an adult relationship. It's not always as obvious as a controlling partner shouting orders, is it?
Oh, rarely. It's often much more subtle. Think about a simple scenario. A couple is getting ready for a party. One partner says, oh, you're wearing that.
And the person raised in the pseudo-mutual home just freezes.
Immediately. They don't just hear a comment on a shirt. They hear the warden. They hear, you are failing the image. So they don't say, yeah, I like this shirt. They don't fight back. They immediately change.
Yeah.
Their default is, I have failed the expectation. I need to correct course to be safe.
That is just heartbreaking. You're 30 years old, you have a career, you pay your own taxes, but in that moment, you're still that little kid just trying to figure out what version of you will keep the peace.
And that leads to this profound loss of boundaries. You become a chameleon in your own marriage. You merge so completely with what your partner wants, where to eat, where to live, how to spend money, that you forget you're even a separate person.
You erase yourself.
You accommodate others to the point of self-erasure.
Because in childhood, having your own needs was breaking character. So you suppress yourself to maintain the connection, just like you did with your parents.
Exactly. You pressure yourself to conform to make sure you won't be abandoned. It's a cycle. You escape the first prison only to inadvertently help build a replica of it with someone else.
But, and this is the crucial part, the part we have to get to, it is a cycle that can be broken.
Absolutely. The script is not written in stone.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about breaking the facade, because once you see the masquerade for what it is, I mean, you can't unsee it.
The first step is really defining what you were missing.
Yeah.
We have to contrast pseudo-mutuality with real love. We have to understand what the real thing looks like so we can finally recognize the counterfeit.
So if pseudo-mutuality is rigid, controlling, and depersonalizing, what is real parental love?
Real parental love is driven by acceptance. It's about authentic understanding and nurturing. The goal of real love isn't to create a mini-me. It's to guide a child toward becoming a fulfilled, independent adult, even if that adult is radically different from the parent.
So real love says, I want to know who you are.
Yes.
And pseudo-love says, I want you to be who I need you to be.
That's the entire distinction. Pseudo-mutuality is driven by the parent's fear. Real love is selfless.
The sources mention some specific findings on recovery. How do people start to heal from this?
Well, acknowledging the trauma is the absolute first step. And that is incredibly hard because from the outside, these families look perfect. You can feel crazy saying, my childhood was painful, when your parents bought you a car and paid for college.
Right, it feels like a betrayal. You feel ungrateful.
But you have to validate your own experience, that the emotional neglect was real. Therapy is heavily emphasized as a tool to rebuild that sense of self, to basically excavate the person who's been buried under the script.
And the research mentions something else that sounds tough but necessary for some people, the idea of cathartic change through creating distance.
Yes. This is a delicate area, of course, but for some, the dynamic is so entrenched that they cannot heal while they're still participating in the play. The research notes that for many, limiting or even cutting contact with the parents was found to be necessary.
It's not about vengeance or punishment, though.
No, it's about self-preservation. It's about removing yourself from an environment that is actively erasing you. You can't find your own voice if someone is constantly talking over it.
It's about stepping off the stage so you can finally figure out who you are when no one is watching.
And I think it's worth circling back to something we touched on earlier, just to hold the complexity here. We talked about the narcissistic warden. It's important to remember that these parents often aren't doing this with a conscious intent to destroy their child.
They aren't monsters under the bed. They're often victims of the exact same cycle.
Exactly. They're very likely repeating a dynamic that was done to them. They're driven by their own deep-seated insecurities. However, and this is the key takeaway, understanding their motivation doesn't negate their responsibility.
Right. You can have empathy for why they are the way they are without accepting that it's okay for them to treat you that way. Intent does not erase impact.
Precisely. Parents have a duty to guide, not to control. And as adults, we have a duty to ourselves to seek out relationships where we are seen, not just used.
So let's bring this all together. We've gone from that perfect picture on the mantelpiece to the reality of the prison cell behind it. We've seen how the warden uses scripts and conditional love to maintain an image, and how the child pays the price with their own identity.
And we've seen how that echo can follow you into your future, turning you into a passive participant in your own life. But the most important thing to remember is that love shouldn't require the erasure of the self.
If you have to disappear to be loved, it's not love, it's consumption.
That is a powerful truth.
I want to leave everyone with a thought to chew on today. We've been talking about parents and children, but this dynamic can happen anywhere. So here is the question I want you to ask yourself. Look at the relationships in your life right now, the people you are closest to. Are you being loved for who you actually are, the messy, complicated, changing version of you? Or are you being loved for the role you play in their story?
And if you stopped playing that role, if you dropped the script, would the love still be there?
That's the real test, isn't it? Authentic understanding is safer than any script. Go seek that out. Thanks for diving in with us.
Take care.